Hi, my name is Ashley and I'm 53 and I wanted to talk about my Christian testimonial. This is something I've wanted to record for a while and it's difficult to do. It's going to be emotional for me. So let's make a start. Okay, when I was 2 or 3, my first memory is of going to Sunday school and being read Bible stories, and I really enjoyed them. It was really, really good to listen to the stories and begin to listen to the parables and get an understanding of what they were. I always loved stories and I enjoyed the teaching and the stories and the colouring and just the whole experience of Sunday school. It was always a positive experience for me. I went to Sunday school. This is going to sound crazy. I went to Sunday school until I was about 11 and I was really involved in my faith. I'd go on church camps. I went to I would go to talks. I enjoyed the whole experience, but it was it was attached to a very traditional church, so it went into stories of Jesus and the parables and some teaching and bits of the Bible and Bible stories, but it didn't go into Bible study and unpicking it and going deep down into it. But I still had this faith. I believed in God and I was happy I believed in God, and that was it. And I had a normal, happy family life. It was me, my mum, my dad. I was the only child. A sister on one side of me and a brother 2 years after me. Both died. So I was the only child. My upbringing until I was about 13, 14 was normal. My dad I would describe as a narcissistic type personality, and he could be really lovely and charming to people and people thought he was really wonderful, but really he wasn't all that wonderful. He had a darker side, but that didn't come apparent until a lot later on. Him and my mum used to fight behind closed doors, and he was always the aggressor and she would always be defending herself, and it was always loud voices, but never enough to know what they were arguing about. But there were quarrels and there were times they didn't get on. They were very much like chalk and cheese. He came across as a very laid back, affable, amiable, kind of nice man, everyday sort of bloke you pass in the street and you think, what a nice chap. Very nice, very personable. People really liked him. People could be taken in by him. And my mum was totally different. My mum was one of the most beautiful people I had ever seen. I don't want to describe what she looks like because I'll cry, but she had the most beautiful face and beautiful eyes, and her personality was vivacious, and she was sociable and everybody liked her. She knew everybody. She would do anything for anybody. She had a good heart. She had a quick temper, which she passed on to me. Again, that's one of my things. But she was a lovely, nice person. She was a good person. She worked hard. She paid for her holidays. She looked after the house. She was a good wife and a good mother. She liked to play tennis socially and perhaps did too much of it, but that was how she escaped, we think, looking back on it with hindsight. And hindsight's always a great leveler, isn't it? You look back and say, oh, look at what happened when you look back, but at the time you can't look at it. Anyway, when I was 14, I was still very innocent. I had no idea about sex apart from what we've learned at school. I went to school, I came home, I did my homework. I was a good girl. I didn't make good grades because I had dyslexia and I struggled, but that was it. I had a small group of friends I hung around with, and a couple of friends I was close to and would hang out. But I kept mainly to myself. I love to read. I've got a rich imagination. I was quite happy with my own company because I was an only child, and you were expected to just bit of the out of sight, keep quiet, no child should be heard, behave yourself sort of attitude. My upbringing was quite strict. It was quite strict at times. And I was curtailed, and there were a lot of things I wasn't allowed to do. I wasn't even allowed to get my ears pierced. That was like a big no-no. No, you're not getting your ears pierced. And I would be like, well, why can't I get my ears pierced? I wasn't allowed to have makeup. My mother chose my clothes at 13. I was dressed more like a 11-year-old. I looked really young for my age, and I was really young and really innocent. I'll admit it, I was still playing with dolls at 14. She's crazy, but I was still a child. And then the worst, the bottom fell out of my world. My mum was playing tennis one day, and socially, and she collapsed onto the court, and she died. And it was put down to a cardiomyopathic virus that had stopped her heart. And she was in her early 40s. And that made my world go sideways. My dad was like in shock at first and was like, I'll look after you, you'll be all right, we've got each other, don't worry about it. And he seemed upset about losing her. And for me, I was numb. God didn't really come into it. I was actually saying, why did you take my mother? Why have you left me with my father? Why have you taken my mother? I was angry with her for dying. I was like, why have you left me? I need you. Why have you died? Why have you left me? And I didn't want her to die. And I'll miss her till the day I die. That's a whole different story. Anyway, I went to her funeral, and there were a lot of people there because she was very deeply liked and loved. And my dad seemed very contrite and very upset. Yet within 8 weeks of her dying, he was dating. He was on dating sites. He couldn't get enough of all these women phoning him and sending him letters. And it was like cherry picking through a sweet shop. I'll have this one, I'll try this one, I'll try this one. This one's wrong with me, this one's on hold, don't like this one. And I'm just sat back thinking, my mum's just died. What are you doing? Even if you voiced anything to him, he got angry and said, I don't want to be on my own. I've got a life of my own. I'm going to move on. And it just seemed a very cold reaction. He didn't really cry after she died. And I was just totally and utterly bewildered why my father was dating 8 weeks after my mother dropped dead. At school, I was told, get on with it. Life happens, move on. I just walked around in this numb bubble. I couldn't speak to people. I just went inwards. I couldn't cry. I was just numb. Everything just passed me by, and I was just didn't notice classes, didn't notice people. I was just completely numbed out. My heart had just stopped. It was cold. It was encased in ice. There was nothing there. I was just totally and utterly shocked. And I think that's what it was. I was just numb and in shock and in grief. And I just didn't know which way to turn. There was no one to talk to. My dad got himself into the dating world and was dating, going on dates, enjoying himself. And within weeks he met somebody. And you might think that's a good thing. He can move on, he can have a nice life, he can meet a new life partner. We can rebuild our family. Except it didn't work like that. I don't want to say too much, but he met somebody that was very, very, even more manipulative than him. And the two of them together were like a class act. He was married within a year. And I had 3 years of abuse. From 14 through to 16. It was pretty horrible. I was numb. I didn't do well in my exams. I just sat and looked at the papers and thought, why am I doing this? I just completely wasn't there. I checked out on my life. I was watching somebody else's life. No one ever offered me grief counselling. No one ever talked to me. No one said, how are you? There was abuse at home. The only thing that didn't happen was physical abuse or sexual abuse, but there was neglect, financial abuse, emotional abuse, just being told you're nothing, you don't mean anything, how could he have a daughter like you? Obviously, neither of them had any faith, and I lived through hell. I wanted to die, I wanted to overdose, I wanted to run away, and I was trapped. I knew my dad would say, until you're 18, you'll do what I tell you, you belong to me. You're my possession. You'll do as you're told. It got to the point where it was, go to school, come home from school, go to your room and stay in your room. They took my television away. I had to eat separately from them. It got to the point where I was given bills. The day I hit 16, I was given a bill and said, you're paying a third of the bills. If you want to stay here, go and get a job. Stop loafing around and sponging off us. You're an adult now. 16. You know? And there were lots of little things and lots of big things, and it was a horrendous existence. Anyway, in this time scale, I went from being a good little girl, sweet little girl, innocent little girl, playing with dollies, to getting in with a crowd through people I knew, and I got hooked up with a bloke that was 21 and I was 15. Yeah, today it'd be called grooming. Yeah, I know. Did I sleep with him? I don't know, but there was activity. I'm not saying what, but there was activity, and it wasn't good, and I was completely and utterly confused. And why was I confused? Because when I was 10, I found my dad's porn stash, these magazines, and I read some of them, and now I was completely confused, and it gave me an overarching view of sex that was, I don't know how to describe it, made me have thoughts I wasn't meant to have. And for a small child that age, what was I meant to do with it? I didn't know what to do with it. It made me, I think later on, it made me over sexual, and I went down a path sometimes that I shouldn't have gone down, and I deeply regret that. That little kid didn't understand what all that was about. Anyway, there was me at 14, 15, hanging around with this 21-year-old. Obviously it fizzled out, and I became more and more isolated at home. And I had one friend I was allowed to go and see, and on one Saturday night she says, we're going around the local church, are you coming? And I must have been coming up 16. And I said, okay. And we went along, went to the service, and I went with her over a few weeks, and he thought I was just hanging out with her. And I got involved with the church, and I wanted to be baptised, and I wanted to get more into it. And stupidly, they said, can we have your parents' number? And like a complete twit, I gave them my dad's number. What happened? They rang my dad. When I get home, all hell broke loose. What the hell do you think you're doing? I'm not having any of this God stuff in my house. No chance. Stop me from seeing that friend. So I was completely isolated at home. And it got to a point where tempers boiled over one night, and my stepmother said to my dad, you choose, I don't want her. You either choose her or me. And he says, don't want my daughter, wouldn't you? In a nutshell. And I was moved out at 16. No job. I was just about to start on a YTS with the city council to do a tourism. And you'd get £29.50 a week as your wage. £29.50. Can you imagine that these days? And I worked on a Saturday in a cafe, and you got maybe £10. So still not a lot of money. My dad says to me, I move you into this house. It's a room in a shared house, and I'll pay your rent for 6 months while you find a proper job or you sort your finances out. He paid the rent for about 2 months, and then the landlady said, I'm really sorry. He stopped paying the rent, and she took some money off the rent if I'd cleaned the house for her and did things for her around the house so I could afford the rent. So all of my money went towards the rent. If I was lucky, I'd have under £10 a week towards food. Seriously. I didn't eat properly. I was living on jacket potatoes, and if I got a loaf of bread, it had to last a week. You know, little jacket potatoes and sandwiches, and really rubbish diet. You'd eat one thing for each meal. It would be the jacket potato, or it would be like some vegetables, or it wouldn't be a full meal. I didn't have a full meal for years. Oh, that sounds awful. My relationship with my dad just plummeted, and we ended up not talking. I hated him. I'll be honest with you, I hated him. I hated him for what he'd done for my mum. I hated him for what he'd done for me. I didn't want to hate, but I was like, why have I got this father? Why is he like this? Why am I so unlucky to be related to you? You know, that wasn't. It wasn't nice, and I felt like from 14 onwards, I grew up without my mother or my father, which is a horrible place to be in. Isolated. I joined the army at 18. I had to be over 18 because I can guarantee if my dad had to sign for anything, no way. So I joined the army at 18, and I enjoyed the army. Yeah, it was a good career, and yeah, I wasn't following God. I definitely wasn't. It was always there in the back of my mind that I'd want to, and there were always signs that he wanted me to go back. If we went to church service, I really enjoyed it, but not enough. I wanted to be in the world. I wasn't hearing God calling me back. And at 20, I got pregnant. Yeah, not ideal. Being a serving forces service woman and being pregnant. Long story short, I had a baby at 21, who I love dearly, and I spent from 21 to 27, 28 on my own with baby. I dated on and off. There was some sexual activity. At 21, I started going to a church, and I got involved with it, and I got immersed in it, and I got rebaptized when my daughter was a year old, and I went to Bible study every week, and I accepted God into my life, and everything always went better when I prayed and I had a walk with God, and it felt good. And those were some of the happier years of my life, with my baby and going to church and having friends. I didn't have family. I didn't have any family at all, to be honest. It was just me and baby. And I met my first husband when I was 27 through a friend of a friend. He was 15 years older than me, and he was a nice chap. He had 3 daughters of his own, and I did love him. I really did love him. And we were married for 7 years, and I was 30, 35, early 30s, and we ended up, me and him, having a sort of brother-sister relationship. It was like, well, actually, I was at the hotel and he popped in and out when he came in from work, and went down the pub because he started drinking because of stress at work, and it put an enormous strain on us, and his drinking just took over, and there wasn't any marriage. It was me doing the marriage by myself. And I tried to stick it out. I tried to talk to him. I could have tried harder. I prayed, I'd stopped going to church after I married him, which was stupid. But I did pray about it, and there wasn't any going back. 35, I had an affair. Yeah, which I regret. I had an affair with somebody I met offline. My head was turned. I went through a period of 5 years where I made some really bad decisions. I moved in with him. My daughter eventually moved in when she was about 16, and she was angry with me for breaking up the marriage to her stepdad. Anyway, she went to college and got very good grades and got accepted at uni. And in the 5-year period, I was with what became second husband. Supposed to be Christian, but not Christian. Yeah, I went to uni myself when I was coming up 40, and I did nursing. And I spent the 3 years, most of the marriage at uni, and qualified. And as soon as I was qualified, I'd made myself a promise that if things hadn't changed between me and him, which it hadn't, we lived in a horrible house, things weren't right. I didn't think I wanted to continue with the marriage. I wanted out, but I didn't know how to get out. And in the end, I left, and it was hard, and I agonised over it and wondered if things could be saved. And my daughter went off to uni, and then followed a period of estrangement, which continues to this day, where it's low contact from her. She's angry with me, and I have apologised, and I own what I do, and I'm an idiot, and I made stupid choices. I can't go back and undo them, but I can live with them. And I've had to forgive myself for things I've done wrong, and just carry on letting her live her life and let me live my life. Anyway, in my relationship with my now husband, third husband, yes, who's my civil partner, it's really good. Over the 13 years of our relationship, I have slowly come back into my relationship and my walk with God. It's taken me a long while, and I have berated myself. I've hated myself. I've been so low. I've had depression. I've been really hard on myself. I haven't forgiven myself. My daughter has not forgiven me and might never ever forgive me, but I have to live with that and wish her well and pray for her. Our lives have gone on different trajectories, and that's the way it is. Anyway, my walk with God now is good. I'm happy. I wish things had been different in the past, but you can't change it. Maybe God meant me to be where I am today. I'm happy with where we are, and you need God in your life. God looks after you. God is your Father. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Thank you for listening.